Today I'm going to try to draw this pretty random hotel on Jeju Island, South Korea. And I decided on this spot after a nice long day of walking along a stunning coastline. I stupidly chose not to draw. So here we are. I'm back in another empty parking lot, once again on the hood of my rental car, a trick I will no doubt hold on to. However, it's one I hope to not need in the near future. It'd be great if I didn't have to rely on finding somewhere to sit. I think that's currently my highest barrier to entry for each of these drawings. Standing up is simply not an option for innumerable reasons, but primarily because it's uncomfortable after just a couple minutes. And even though it looks a little like I'm standing here, like I'm holding up the sketchbook freely in the air, my elbow is actually comfortably against me, so it's not nearly as impractical as standing. I learned my lesson from the second video. I think that's the only one that I've stood for, and it was terrible. That said, it's also not as comfortable sitting on this car hood as fully sitting, so that I can rest my elbows and sometimes the sketchbook itself on my legs. But my options to sit are starting to feel more and more limited. The likelihood that I happen upon both a view that I like with a nice place to sit that also happens to be out of the way of pedestrians is low, to say the least. So I've been thinking about picking up one of those camp stools with the tripod legs and fabric seat. And I'm becoming such an old man. Wow. Uh, Carrying around my tripod, drawing supplies, and now a chair of my own. I love it. But yeah, being able to set everything up wherever I want would be a real game changer. Plus, today is my second to last day on Jeju, which means no more car, which means no more makeshift seat. So I'm gonna have to figure something else out. I'll talk more on the last days on Jeju in a bit. As for the drawing, I tried my best to do a few quick sketches beforehand, like I've been recently mentioning constantly, because while there are a lot of those off-kilter planes for me to figure out, there were also 3 or 4 extra parking spaces that you can't see on the bottom of the frame, which threw me off a bit compositionally. I liked the diagonal line that leads up to the building, but I overestimated how much of that line I could include because, as you can kind of see, I know the paper's a little bright, but it'll get better. It pushed the building a little too far to the top, and I didn't really want that. Ideally, I would have drawn it the way you see it here, just with maybe a little bit more space on the sides, which would mean more space on the top and bottom, which would give me room to have that leading line and keep the building a little bit more central. But ultimately, it doesn't bother me too much. I'm just being kind of picky. I will come out and say now that this drawing was really all over the place, and I actually almost considered scrapping the video and just doing a different one. I just think the process that you see is really disjointed. The reference is, like I said, a little bit random. And the final drawing is pretty bland and uninspired, unfortunately. But, and this is something I keep reiterating to myself, that's just part of the point. If I wanted to make videos about something I was good at, I certainly wouldn't have picked drawing. And if you wanted to watch videos of people drawing really well without all the forthcoming months of struggle, you'd go elsewhere. So, as indifferent as I might feel about this one, and maybe indifferent is the wrong word, as much as I kind of dislike it, I need to remember that the process is the process. And some of these, plenty of these, are just going to suck. Plus, who knows, maybe my brain is soaking up some of that abstract information that I'm not privy to, meaning the next time I draw something like this, I'll be able to breathe a little bit more life into it. Here I'm going right into drawing the stairs, and I don't know how I feel about this. I've gone back and forth on the whole details versus silhouette thing, as you know, but this one was so strange. The whole drawing was so strange that I felt like I needed to get some detail in there, um, just so I didn't give up the whole thing altogether. Most of the building itself is kind of sort of there already, so I figured it wouldn't be that big of a deal to get something like the stairs locked down, even to the point of using bolder lines, as you can see. References like these seem like they're going to be really fun because they look packed with detail, but beyond a bunch of squares, there's very little to them, and they end up being a lot less exciting than they seem from the outset. The stairs, they give me a little bit of energy, momentum, however wonky they might look. And other than that bush, maybe like the windows, there's nothing else I can say that about. I think it's because something like the stairs, the railing, the bush, maybe even like the roof tiles, that stuff is a bit more up for interpretation, and they feel, and this is gonna sound so stupid, they feel like real drawing, if that makes sense. Uh, the rest of this whole drawing is so straightforward, so much so that the smallest deviation would kind of look like a mistake. Getting the shape or angle of one of the walls wrong would be an odd choice, um, to make, given that I chose this reference specifically. But smaller things like even the windows, that kind of stuff doesn't need to be exactly correct. So they're a little bit more fun to draw. I yearn for the day that I can draw nature. Yeah, just nature broadly, like trees, clouds, waves, hills, stuff like that. When I can comfortably draw that stuff, I think I'm really going to start having fun. I am enjoying myself now for sure. But some of those super subjective organic shapes that I've talked about, being able to interpret those types of things my own way sounds amazing. So yeah, the stairs and the smaller details feel like a little respite from the rest of the drawing. And I think all of my drawings so far have had at least one element within them that's felt similar to that. Maybe not the lantern one, though. We can all just forget that that one exists. So yeah, it's our second day. Sorry, second to last day on the island. Bittersweet as always. Well, it's my first time here, but as my wife and I travel full time, we're always moving from one place to another. So some are harder to leave than others, but regardless, we're typically excited for what's next. But I think this one will be tough. It's not only our first time on Jeju, but in South Korea as a whole. And our experience has been, it's exceeded all of my expectations. It's funny doing this kind of thing for so long. It's been almost 10 years since starting this like full time on the road thing. And we're still putting a little bit too much stock into the opinions of strangers on the internet, or at least I am. Um, and that goes for both the negatives and the positives. Before coming to Jeju, I was reading simultaneously high praise and deep criticism of the island. The back and forth was kind of getting to me, and there was a moment when I almost regretted making plans to come here, which is silly because we're normally in one place for about a month, at least a month, and this was only 2 weeks. But I had just read so much, and for whatever reason, I was fixated on all those negative opinions. People were talking about how it was boring, which I don't ever know if I should trust because normally people are talking about like nightlife, which I'm uninterested in anyway. But they would say that people were a little bit closed off, the weather could be mercurial, and most of all, most pertinent to me, how the nature was underwhelming. One person would compare it to something like Hawaii, which in fairness is probably a bad comparison. And the next would just strike them down and say it's a far cry from it. And if anything, it was unspectacular or forgettable. Why I did this to myself, I don't know. I generally stay away from research like that, if you can call it that. But I guess I didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, and I wanted to set my expectations properly. Turns out there's nothing for me to worry about because I've fallen in love with this place more than I have with any other place in a long time. And I feel a little childish for working myself up like that. Jeju Island has been anything but forgettable. It's no Iceland or Scottish Highlands or Hawaii, like some people who've probably never even been to those places said. But it doesn't have to be. It's beautiful all its own, and I'm really, really happy that it was my introduction into the country. I have no idea what the mainland has in store for us, but I almost don't care because of how remarkable it's been here. The people have been welcoming beyond compare. Well, their neighbors to the east do a pretty comparable job too. But everyone has been so kind and hospitable. The food everywhere we go is delicious. The flowers are in bloom. The driving's been easy. Just everything about this place has been out of a dream. And we're actually already making plans to return, which, on that note, will make for a pretty cool comparison as it regards this channel. I'd love to be able to redraw some of these, in particular the first one. Redrawing that big coastal view after a year, I think we'll come back around the same time, so it'll work out to about a year. That would be, to me, the ultimate test of progress, and I'm just excited thinking about it. But yeah, tomorrow is our last day here. Luckily, it looks like the weather will hold out before the rain starts next week, and I think I'm going to draw another lighthouse. I found another one on the map pretty close by, and it looks like it could be a fun one and a possible one for me to draw. It's much more traditional looking compared to the first one, so I'm just hoping there's a nice spot to set up and make a video. I don't have my camp chair yet, so I, I hope there's somewhere to sit. But I think it'll be a good way to round out this part of the series, the whole Jeju Island part. From here, well, we're still going to be in South Korea, headed to the mainland for a few days, but I'll tell you more about that tomorrow. For now, let's see what I'm up to. At this point, it felt like I'd done the majority of what there was to do. There's that swirly texture on the walls that I was eager to draw, which I unfortunately do. And it kind of ruins the whole thing for me. You'll see. But around now, as I'm struggling to be excited about continuing, the diagonal line is kind of just that. Where in photography, it would maybe feel a bit more meaningful. Here, it really is just a line on the ground. So drawing it feels more mandatory than artistic. But that actually reminds me of something I wanted to bring up quickly, and that's filling the space. In photography, it's generally a good thing, at least in street photography, which is a significant component of what I do, to fill the frame. It's just a technique, but when used properly, it really can't be overstated. Part of me can't get that idea out of my head when it comes to drawing. Right now, I can see that I could have drawn this hotel sort of floating on the page. I don't need to ground everything perfectly, but when I'm drawing it, it feels the opposite. By not grounding everything, even sometimes adding a horizon line when I know I don't need to literally include the horizon, it can feel incomplete. But when I look back, it can look too closed in, like boxed in, and I sometimes wish I could just make a drawing of something, some specific something, without all of the surrounding context. I think the compositional technique of filling the frame is part of that in my head, probably a big part, but also the whole nature of photography is that it just is the whole frame no matter what. Even if you center the subject right in the middle on a barren landscape with no context whatsoever, the image extends to the end of itself, if that makes sense. The edges are photographic information, whether it's full of detail or not. So maybe part of my apparent inability to just draw something floating there in space is because that doesn't ever exist in the medium that I most often use. Even if it's like an empty blue sky, the blue of the sky still goes to the end of the image and it's there even if nothing else is there. To defy that part of me, I should really find a scene and pick one single thing out of the entire scene and just draw an empty space. Hopefully, I'll be able to ignore that uncomfortable part of me that just needs the flower or building or statue to be sprouting out from somewhere and just draw it all alone. And, I've already made up my mind about this one. Nothing to write home about, but also definitely happier than I was with the Cafe Dendry facade. This one was more challenging, but still not my favorite by any means. That said, I'm going to keep attempting these because I think they'll be pretty helpful in the long run for perspective, for line work, and just for the sake of improving upon this type of reference. I think it'll be worth the effort before long. So, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. And if you're watching this and you're not already subscribed, what do you think you're doing? Help me out. Subscribe to my channel, please. Anyway, I appreciate you taking the time to watch this one. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.